Hi, you're listening to SUP DOC.
This is a show where we talk to interesting people, filmmakers, comedians, writers, about documentaries they have strong opinions about. I'm George Chen.
And I'm Paco Romane. And today we're talking about The Imposter. You can watch this documentary on Netflix, but there is a spoiler alert on this, so if you've not seen this documentary, turn this little thing off, go watch it, and come right back.
This is definitely a documentary that plays out a lot like a fictional narrative. That the truth is weirder than fiction in this case, for sure. As a guest, we have Beth Lisick, who is a writer, memoirist, does both fiction and nonfiction. She also runs the storytelling show Porchlight here in San Francisco. And multi-talented, multifaceted, creative person, writer, performer, documentary fan.
Yeah.
Big documentary fan.
What was the first, do you remember the first documentary you saw?
You know, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but when I was the first one that I remember ever seeing was probably Stop Making Sense when I was a teenager. And I went on a date with somebody that I had known since fourth grade, and he got his driver's license. And I think I had had my driver's license about 6 months before he got his, and he got his driver's license that day. He pulled up in his Pinto wagon.
Whoa, classy.
Yeah, he is so great. And he's like, hey, let's go to downtown San Jose and see Stop Making Sense. Yeah. And I didn't really, I'd heard Talking Heads on the radio, on the college radio or whatever. But so that was probably the first one that I ever saw. And then, but I saw Marjo, which we were talking about when I was in like freshman in college or something.
Classic.
And yeah, that's a great one.
I remember going to those downtown San Jose theaters, like the Camera 1.
Yeah, Camera 1 and Camera 3.
I grew up down there too. And I'd go see like the art house, whatever the 80s art house thing was. But yeah, I was a big Talking Heads fan also, so that's what got me into that one.
Yeah, people would run around the theater
And that is, who directed? Jonathan Demme directed that one. That's right.
Oh yeah,
the guy who made Silence of the Lambs made David Byrne wear a big suit.
Yeah. I should go back and watch that. I forgot how much I love that, and just that album, Stop Making Sense too, is just so great.
Yeah, concert movies are a little bit different, like in they're still documentaries, but they're not. I guess they're nonfiction.
Yeah, and only David Byrne could possibly get you to cry by singing a love song to a lamp. That guy is such a genius, man.
I'll watch documentaries about bands that I barely know, because I just there's something to me about. And this is true of most music, is that my favorite music is generally the music of people I know, musicians that I know. And so I think that there's just a correlation there between watching something kind of behind the scenes or having some kind of information about a person, and then you see what their creative output is, and it's so much more meaningful to me. And so I think that that's the same with those documentaries that are, whether it's, just live concert films or behind the scenes stuff or whatever it is, but that it always makes me appreciate that person's music so much more than if I just heard it, and then I don't think it could independently come to the idea like, oh, I like this music if I just turned it on the radio.
Yeah, absolutely. And so today, however, we're talking about The Imposter. Yeah. Dun dun dun. What a doc. What's the how did you hear about it? How did you get to it?
Let's see. I regularly check the Netflix streaming, and I found that people will compile lists sometimes, like what are the best 25 documentaries streaming on Netflix right now, because they rotate them or bring new ones in, and so it must have been through that, I think. The title is it's just one of those evocative titles where you're like, what? Who's the imposter? What did he do? What's it? And
who is this imposter?
Yeah. So I think that was it. Netflix streaming.
And you obviously you're a big fan of documentaries. And when you watched this, what was the feeling that you took away from when you first started getting into it?
I watched it again recently with my son, which was interesting. He's 13. And so the first time I think I was by myself at home watching it, and I just was so creeped out by the guy.
Yeah.
How you just those ones where you're basically they're interviewing them and you're searching their eyes and their expression and what they're doing, kind of like in the Jinx with Robert Durst, where you're just like watching every little tick and everything that they do to just kind of try to get some insight into who and how this is possible.
I thought it was incredible, but that they had Frederick Bardin, the imposter, that they actually had him. He actually sat down and talked to them,
right?
And he did it in such a compelling way. Like you got some of his charisma from watching that weird smile and his dark eyes, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole thing is set up when it starts. You know, it's called The Imposter, and there he is, and he starts right away talking about what he did to try to trick this family. And so there is something about the way that he lays that story out, though, where he is. You're kind of feeling sorry for him a little bit, right?
Because he's abused by his mom. He didn't have a good relationship with he had some kind of like need to redo his childhood over.
Right. And so then you understand, okay, so he calls the cops on himself saying that they found, you know, pretending to be somebody else. I found this kid in this phone booth. And then it's weird how it spirals into him spending the night in that police station and actually just all the little steps with how he actually fell into being flown to the United States. I mean, that I thought was so fascinating because you're going back and forth the whole time. Like, okay, I can understand how you had a shitty childhood and you need attention. You need something from this. You need something emotionally from this. But then there would just be these lines that would get crossed and then he'd go further and you'd be like, oh, I don't know. And then when it gets to the part where he's just he's going to fly back and pretend to be this kid, it's just kind of like, even though you've seen the steps, it seems completely unbelievable that somebody would do that.
This is truly one of those ones where you couldn't make it any better if you try to fictionalize it. It's just like so bizarre.
Yeah, if you said, okay, we're gonna take this kid with brown hair and darker complexion and dark eyes and French. And he's going to play the part of this small town Texas boy with blonde hair and blue eyes, who's 5 years or how many ever years younger he was? 7. Okay. Yeah. I mean, what if you were making a film where you're like, okay, it's going to be weird, but the family's actually going to believe it's him when he comes. You know, you would never believe that.
Yeah, and that's that whole lights, camera, action thing where the best documentaries seem to be in the right place at the right time, you know, to capture some of that. That's why I still think it's just crazy that they were able to get him to sit down and actually talk about this. But it's kind of like Robert Durst again. Like some people are compelled to tell their story their way because they're always trying to manipulate somebody, you know. But so let's go back to the beginning where he's smart enough to call the cops. So obviously he's probably done that before, wouldn't you think? That like he's done this trick before?
Yeah.
He
Absolutely.
pretends to be a tourist. And
yes.
Like that is just so right off the bat. I'm like, God, it's so clever.
Yeah,
I would never think of that.
But he says something that he's done before because he'd spent the night because he'd say, oh, then I'd get a meal or then I'd get So it is definitely something he's got up his sleeve. It's just a way that he.
And then he's like, if I pretend that I don't want to be touched and talked to, they're going to think something sexual happened. So I don't actually have to say anything.
Right.
Like he already has this whole like manipulation.
Yeah, I had the clothes on that were really big and I was kind of hiding, sinking into them. And
and then like, so they hold him. He won't answer any questions. And then like getting on the phone and calling the child hotline, whatever it's called, escaping me right now. But like the
Rain, was it Rain?
Maybe.
Oh no, that's Rainforest Action Network. What am I thinking of?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, that's something else. Never mind. I'm thinking of something else.
The child abduction hotline or whatever it is, and then like just being like, okay, well, fax me that one. Then,
God.
Like, saying that this, and he's like, if there's any doubt, you know, if the family has any doubt, then I have an in. But like, I don't know. I'm like, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just like you've been cornered? You know, like if
there's got to be some compulsion. Like, how far can he push it? Like, what's the next step with it? Yeah. What else can he do?
I thought getting the tattoos was like a crazy move. That was like one of the crazier moves because it's doubtful he actually had photos of the tattoos, so he was just going off the descriptions. I'm like, if someone just said, oh, I have a cross on my hand, like, how do you know what to do even in that situation?
Right. And
Yeah.
and also because of the year, what year was it? This is
97
95 or 7? Okay.
Well, 97 is when this takes place. When
Okay,
he
so
gets sent.
that also makes sense that like he's getting this like bad, like on that thermal paper, the fax that comes through, you know, that he couldn't tell how blonde the kid actually was and all this stuff because you see that picture and it's a really bad, you know, bad quality picture, so you can't really tell. So it is also like, now would there be, you be doing it on email and there would be this like photo that he would look at on the computer probably and see all that stuff too. So there was something with that as well, that like because of the time they're like faxing, you know,
you're not getting color.
Dot matrix.
Yeah, the office fax machine, which also, if he had to get it emailed, what would be his email address that would seem official? You know, but he was in that office, and so he had that fax machine, and that's like one step.
I think I got my Hotmail account in 97.
Yeah.
That's like when I started that.
My it'd be like missing children's at CompuServe.net.
Yeah.
There's an AOL chat room where you could just, maybe he was on AOL chat rooms and finding out about missing children that way. That could have been his thing.
Oh, the balls on this guy. And then
And to be like in his early 20s playing 16 and like, really the only thing they had in visibility common, they were both kind of lanky and he had these gap teeth.
Yeah.
Oh
Kind of
yeah,
the
the
only
gap
thing
in
that
the
had
teeth. The
go
gap
for
in the
it,
teeth.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, he got lucky with the gap.
Yeah.
So then he gets the fax and he tells these, he convinces everybody that he's this kid. Like, what? So when you are starting to watch this, what are you thinking? Like, it's going to happen?
Well, I think that with how he presents himself, you kind of don't know. I think that's what's so great about it, is you actually don't know how far he'll go, what he'll do when he's with the family. You know, it seems unlikely, I guess, that he would murder the whole family or something like that, but you never know. And so I think that there's something about watching that kind of person that's so compelling, because as you see, he's, oh my God, the sister's coming to the airport. She's picking him up. They're going to fly back to the family home. First of all, it's so hard to believe that she would believe that was him. But I think that what I was thinking was like, what the fuck is going to happen when he gets back to Texas and the mother's there and the rest of the family's there and they're looking at this guy and how is he going to react? Like, what kind of stress or if this person goes into a circumstance like this, like what is that going to do to them? Yeah, to be under that pressure.
I found it interesting because what you do know that he obviously didn't kill the sister or anything because she's speaking to the camera, but the way that they set that up where it doesn't give that much away, it's almost like they're just like take yourself back to that moment and describe what was going on in those moments. I think is maybe what the director had to do to get them to be like, you're like, whoa, like I know this, they know what's already happened, and it's just kind of always lurking right under the surface, but they're like phrasing it like, well, then I picked him up at the airport, and like they still have that tone to it, which is, I'm like, we know this doesn't end well because there's a movie called The Imposter that you are in.
Right.
So,
well, I read this thing about the making of this doc.
Oh, you did?
And Bart Layton, the director, apparently spent, each interview that you see was a full day. Like he would spend an entire day with them, talking to them, hoping that by at some point they would get to where they were just dropping their guard and they could talk, and without being encumbered by the fact that they know how it ends and all that stuff.
Right.
You know, like that's a tough situation to be in. Also, apparently, it was really hard to find this family. This many years later, they did not want to talk to anybody about this. I mean, they made this film 7, 8, 9, 10 years later. So like apparently it took them quite a while to like locate this family and then convince them to talk about it.
Well, that's another fascinating thing, is that family, the Dollarhide family, incredible name. Dollarhides. Yeah. And you find out, that the mother has been a pill addict, or, and so there's also that part of like something's off in that family as well, right? And when they got to the point that like, he's 13, he'd run away before, he had tattoos.
Yeah, 13-year-old tattoos is kind of like, would you let your 13-year-old have tattoos?
Like that's that's a pretty intense thing, that this kid is giving himself tattoos, and that the story felt so carefully worded that the mother was sleeping, he was at basketball. They got the call. The brother told him to walk home and didn't wake the mother up. And then the brother later
The
says that
half-brother,
the half brother says that he's trying to break into the house a few days later. Like there's weird stuff going on there too. It's not just the story of this person kind of pulling the wool over the eyes on this family. It's like, what is going on in that family that kind of I mean, I'm not saying they brought it on themselves. They did not deserve that. But I do think that there was something funky going on in that family.
Yeah. Well, when that private investigator character comes in, I call him a character because I know it's a documentary, but he looks
such a
so
character.
much like, it's like, oh, they should have gotten, it's like Ned Beatty or like
right. Oh, absolutely.
But he's a real life guy's like on the phone, like, I'm a private detective.
Well, but you remember his name?
I do not.
Charlie Parker.
Yeah, Charlie Parker.
I mean, come on, you can't write
sedan that he's driving.
Yeah.
Oh.
You can't write, and the suspenders, like, you can't write that kind of stuff. Charlie Parker, I mean, come on.
And he's got his tip about the earlobes, how he figures out it's not him from looking at the earlobes. And what TV show was it?
I got Adobe Photoshop. I downloaded Adobe Photoshop. I paid for the trial period, and then I compared the ears. I'm like, what?
Yeah, this documentary is one of those classic ones where I think you mentioned it earlier, you couldn't write something like this without people just thinking you're just derivative hack, they're just making stuff up. But like you also could not compile a more, like, without it being sounding too pejorative, but like a white trash family, like the Dollar Hides, that was heartbreaking actually for me when they said they get the call that he's in Spain, and the sister says, Spain? I don't even know where Spain is. I mean, it's across the country somewhere. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my God, like, this is terrible. I know. Like, this is so sad. It is sad, and there's so much to that of like, of the class struggle, white trash, and also as you get into it, you're thinking and the director does a very good job of presenting this to you, where you're like, you probably know where your son is, like, are you guys are just faking this, right?
So that's like a thing that gets brought up about in the last quarter of the film, but it's do you think that's what's going on? Like, I there's something up with the half brother who's dead, is my opinion. There's definitely something going on there. Yeah. But
that's what I thought. I thought that perhaps he killed him, and that the mother doesn't necessarily know that, and I don't think the sister knows. I don't really think the sister knows anything. Yeah. But she might suspect, but I think there seemed like there was this protection going on that I think probably is common to people who they've probably had, shit going on with the law and with, child support payments and who knows what goes on in that family. Yeah. But that their instinct would be to not really help the police and not really give them that much information. And if something had gone wrong, they might have that idea that they don't want to stir anything up because they've got all these skeletons in their closets, or they don't have good experiences bringing the law into their life. So why would they, it's so that it seemed like something there, because the mother, whether she knows what's up or not, like, she's really out of it. And I felt like she was trying to protect the half brother that had died.
Yeah, right. Like, just even if there was, just to keep his legacy sort of unsullied or whatever. Right.
And he died of cocaine overdose, and then we find out that the mom was addicted to heroin. Right. As well.
Oh, I missed that part.
Well, it's not in the documentary. Okay. That's like this postscript thing that when I was doing a little bit more research, it came out that she had been addicted to heroin. They just don't bring it up.
And I think that's really interesting too, because that's like, how would it have been different if when he introduced the family, he had kind of brought out all their dirty laundry, but he doesn't. And you just think, okay, so this is this, rural family who, don't know where Spain is, like, what, but yeah. And he didn't say, like, here's the mom. She's an ex-heroin addict.
For me, the sticking point I have with this documentary is I feel, now this is maybe no one else feels this way, I feel that Frederick Bardin, the con artist imposter, really wasn't that big of a criminal. He was just kind of this lonesome guy who's he's manipulative, sure, and he lies a lot, and he is a con artist. The bigger criminal lies, I think, with the family, the criminality, and this missing kid. I'm not saying that the family killed him, but the kid's probably dead by now. 1993 when he came up missing. Like for me, the criminals probably lie more with the family criminality than the con artist. But the director chose to put that impetus on the con artist and not the family.
I feel like he leaves it pretty ambivalent at the end because it's like you realize how much of a liar this guy is. So it's like, okay, this accusation's coming from here. And so even the family is like, yeah, like, of course, look at how many lies he told. Yeah, he's going to accuse our family of being responsible somehow. Going back to the thing about the half-brother, wasn't it the half-brother who shows up, sees him, and is just like, good luck, and then leaves? Yeah. So, like, that one knew something was up. So that was a drop that they kind of brought in before they really got into his character background.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting that he said. And who told that though? Was that Frederick that said that he said good luck to him?
Yeah.
Frederick.
So then that's also weird too, because then that's through his filter. But when he said that, I thought like good luck. Like it's almost like he's just like, I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but all right, I'm staying out of it. And he just kind of disappeared after that.
He really must not have said very much for the accent to not have like impinged on anything, but because that was a pretty notable accent. Yeah. But like to be like, if you're not like the talented Mr. Ripley, if you're just like, hey, governor, let's go down and have a spot of tea.
Oh, needs a chimney sweep.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think I do a better like Scottish accent than that dude or something. But it's strange. Like, it is so strange. And the fact that he was going to high school and like, everyone's just like, oh, you know that kid that was horribly abused? Yeah. Let's hang out with him at lunchtime.
Pick up where we left off.
Yeah. Covered in cigarette burns and like broken wrists and things like that, which those seem to be real. So he had to like, when he said, oh yeah, I broke my hand, it's like, well, he's got something there if they got to x-ray him. He can't lie about all that stuff.
Right. Nicholas Barclay, right? That was the kid that came up missing.
Yeah.
And he was like a truant. I mean, I hate to do, I'm certainly not blaming the victim, but like he was a truant kid who had a lot of problems with like authority and getting in trouble. And I think he was arrested for robbing a convenience store or something.
At 13?
At 13.
That's crazy.
And, it could be, you never know. Obviously, we don't know. The documentary certainly doesn't get to the point where we find out what happened to Nicholas, and I don't think they still know. I think that's still up for grabs, as it were.
Yeah, that's totally open. So it's like, what did happen to him? Either he was murdered by somebody in the family, he was murdered by somebody not in the family. Yeah. Or he ran away and somehow... But I just don't see like a rural Texas, small town, 13-year-old running away and then just never coming back or contacting his family again. Yeah. Like, I don't think that that's a scenario. Yeah. I don't think he ran away.
No, I don't. I think maybe he was killed by Robert Durst. That's what, maybe, because, Galveston...
Yeah, that far.
You never know. I'm going to make casual connections between all the documentaries.
I think that Robert Durst may have hobbled the Iron Sheik also. Another step. I do think it's fascinating when you think about the fact that he did all this research, when I'm talking about Bourdain, like pre-internet, right? Like it's pre-internet. Yeah. He had to have he had to get by living in Spain and he had adopted multiple personalities before this had happened. So he was very good at just like ingratiating himself with people, figuring out their just how to play on their emotions, I guess, or just be so pathetic that they felt like they had to help him out. The combination probably of that guy's childhood and the psychology of that is so intense. To be able to take on all those different things that he's done and to somehow feel like he really was, like he kind of knew what to do. Like he became a United States citizen. With a
passport. Yeah. As a 20-something-year-old.
Yeah.
That's kind of an amazing form of genius.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. And his story. Let's get into the story for a second. Like the allegations.
That he tells the FBI.
Yeah. Like that's insane what he comes up with. It's a mix up between the U.S. military, Mexico, right? Mexican drug smugglers, the U.S. military.
With these private planes.
Yeah, and the private planes that abducted him, took him to Europe where he was abused and then prostituted. Is that a word?
Yeah.
With between in the
By
military.
The military, yeah.
Right.
I'm like, that is just insane. And then they're like, you know what? That checks out.
Yeah.
I think that's, they're like, yeah, we've heard that before,
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
I don't understand how that passes the test.
It sounds like what it was so specific that they
Right,
could,
he was raped
that
between
didn't seem like
1
a lie.
and 2 times a week, or and they had all the he had just that whole scenario ready to go.
She did seem to be a little bit doubtful.
Well,
the
that's
FBI
the
agent.
later. What's her name? Nancy Fisher.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, she was, but she's the one in the United States. I mean, the people in Spain that they came. The State Department, right? They came and talked to him.
Right, yeah.
And he was just like, hey, all this, I was abducted by the U.S. military / FBI / Mexican drug cartel and prostituted around Europe to different military
And they're
bases.
like, yep, that could happen. sounds completely reasonable. I mean, I believe it. I believe there's something like that. Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah, and they're like, that's what scares me even more is the fact that it happens, and they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, who knows if he came across somebody at some point and they told him about that, and he was like, I'm going to use that someday. But the best form of lying is confuse him with details. Be as specific as possible, and it seems like he had that stuff down. And so his sister comes. And that's when I was like, well, the jig is up.
Yeah.
I mean, the sister's coming.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way she could possibly think that was her. I mean, he's like a dark-complected French Algerian or something with an accent and brown eyes. And
and that weird thing about how they changed his eye color.
Yeah.
The torturous way in which that's why his eyes were brown.
Him and Durst have those crazy doe eyes, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that part. Yeah, he says
they tinted him.
They tinted his eyes.
And also, I think if you say something like the most horrible, unspeakable things have happened to your brother, he's not going to be able to talk.
Yeah.
He's going to be very withdrawn. He's been tortured. We just get him home. And also, like her going into that, her emotional state must have been so. That's probably the last thing on her mind was to be like, wait a minute,
that's true.
That's not my brother.
She just accepted.
Yeah,
him.
you just would accept it. The Spanish government is contacting you, saying, of course you're going to believe it.
That is a good point, but it's like I know. My sister's so.
I know.
I feel like if someone was like, "I'm your sister," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, hey, you remember?" And they're like, "Nope." I'm like, "You're not my sister." Or my sister's such a smart ass. Like I'm like, "You haven't said anything sarcastic in the last 10 minutes."
Right. Oh, and he had that whole thing about how the sister prepped him for the questions. Remember, because she showed him all the family pictures. It was like, this is where we did this, and I thought, okay, that's her like reaching out and trying to be like, remember, come back to me, my brother, or whatever. Yeah. But he thought of it as like, oh, she's trying to cover something up by hoping that I'll pass as the brother so that his murder or whatever happened to him will not be revealed.
Yeah.
I'm going to sound weird, but I've been
too late
in this one experience in my life where I was at a thing, like a convention or something. I was talking to my sister from the back. Turns around, it's like a doppelganger of my sister, where like I'm for like a full like 30 seconds I'm like, you are and are not my sister at the same time. And she was just like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, you look totally like my sister. And it was this bizarre thing, like, and everyone, it kept happening because then I became friends with that person, and then it would keep being this thing where people would mistake my sister for her or vice versa, and they worked across the street from each other at one point. Like she worked at a tattoo shop on 16th Street. My sister had the store across the street, and people were like, hey, I waved at you and you're being a dick, you ignored me. And she's like, oh, that was my doppelganger. Like they ended up like working, and her last name was Chen also, so it was this whole bizarre thing. So now if I put them side by side, it's not that they look so alike, but there's certain things about them that you could just pick out a few things that are identifiable and be like, that's, I mean, I know what my sister looks like, but I could see this person being like a doppelganger. It's totally convincing. And her sister this person's sister saw my sister and had the same experience back and forth of just like, oh, well, but this is hard to say in this case. There's no doppelganger issue because also, someone would grow a lot between 13 and like 17.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I think that's what's just so amazing about this is that you watch it and everybody who I've talked to about it is like, how could that person believe that would actually be the brother? But what I think is so great about this film is that like it really does get you into that weird emotional like a glimpse into that emotional state where you're like, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't know. Maybe you would just be hoping so badly that you just are blinded. And like how incredible, like how, it's like there's just things I think in watching documentaries and real people doing real things that those moments where you're like, that seems impossible, and yet you're watching it. I mean, that's why I love documentaries. Have you ever been conned? Ooh, let me think. I mean, the one time, oh my God, this is just an embarrassing one, but because now everybody knows who this person is, I think around San Francisco, the basketball player.
Oh no! I thought you were going to talk about JT Leroy.
Oh well, I was conned by JT Leroy.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Have you seen that documentary?
No.
Oh,
I want
let's
to
go.
see it. So,
it's playing at the
right
Roxy.
now?
Yeah, at the
Let's
Roxy.
go after this.
Whenever this airs, check out JT Leroy. What is the name of the JT Leroy documentary?
I can't remember.
But that's a little bit different because it's not like it's a completely fabricated person, so it's not like someone to compare it to. But it was like someone of a different
right. There's a lot of conning
gender was
going
questionable.
on.
Yeah, like
there was so much conning going on.
Sarah.
But I got an email from JT Leroy, and I actually read at JT Leroy's first book party. He was so shy and couldn't be in front of a crowd that he picked local authors to read for him. And so at a different light, I think it was in the Castro, I read an excerpt of Sarah, and I just remember being like, oh my God, this poor kid, this is so, but he emailed me, reached out to me and was like, I'm a fan of your work, blah, blah. And I didn't get as deep into it as a lot of people did, but yeah, that one. But I know I was just conned once on Haight Street by this guy who like, and this is so great too, because I was probably 20 years old and he wore a basketball a jersey and like a sweatsuit, and he would carry around a basketball and say that he had a basketball scholarship and that he had like lost, he'd lost his apartment and, this whole thing. But he was just such a sweet, good looking man that I was just like, he has to be telling the truth. And then I gave him, a couple bucks or something. And then I just remember years later, like 5 years later, being in the Haight and having the same guy walk up to me with his basketball, and I was just like, you are not getting me this time. I was
Did
just
you
like,
say that to him?
Yeah, I was like, I
Nice.
can't believe you're still telling this story.
Yeah.
Because it was such an involved story. And the thing you're saying about the details, he had so many details about his daughter and his family and where he grew up and the scholarship that was supposed to come through, and like he had so much to say that it was almost like he was, like it was like the dazzle camouflage of so many details that I was just like, well, wow.
So he was just asking for a little bit of money in that situation. That's a short con.
Yeah,
this is a long con.
Yeah. I've never been there on the receiving end of a long con.
Well, that is and with not much emotional like scarring, like as like this stuff where you're involving a family and their dead son, and like I have to say I was conned out of $300 once, and I met a guy at the laundromat near my house, and he had me hook, line, and sinker. It was incredible. He came up to me and he's like, "Are you a musician?" I was like, "Yeah, I am a musician." He's like, "Oh, I saw your T-shirt," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I had this Yoshi's Oakland T-shirt on." This was a long time. It was like 12 years ago. And he basically was saying that he was in town playing for a jazz band called the Yellow Jackets, who do exist. There's a band, the Yellow Jackets. And that he was their piano player. And it just so happens I'm also a jazz piano player, which he got out of me, which I didn't even realize I had told him. But he got that out of me and said if I wanted, I could sit in with the Yellow Jackets that night. And I was like, that would be a dream come true. That would be amazing. So we end up coming back to this apartment where we're recording this, and he was like, all I need to do, this is before anyone had cell phones, all I need to do is call the union and make sure that's okay. And I'm like, well, I'm not part of the union. He's like, oh, if you're not part of the union, we can get you a 1-day pass. It's $300.
my God.
And that's we can go there and we can get you this pass. It's $300, and then you can sit in with the Yellow Jackets and play a couple songs. And I've already told we do this in different cities that we go to. We just find musicians and they sit in. But if you're not part of the musicians local union 104,
incredible.
And then I had a car at the time, and I was like, "What do we need to do?" And he's like, "Well, it's in the mission. If you want to just drive me, you can." So I drive him. We get to this place. It looks legitimate. He's like, "I'll be right back. You don't need to come in. Just sit right here, and you just give me $300." I gave him $300. He comes back in. He's like, "You're in the books. It's good. We're good to go." He gives me an address to take him to. I take him to this address. He's like, "This is where we're playing tonight. So show up at 8. Get here. You're all set."
This is incredible.
This went on for hours. I was with this guy for like 4 to 5 hours, and then I drop him off. I come back home.
Got all ready for your big gig. You're like, gotta put my gig shirt on. What am I gonna wear?
Girl, you don't even know. I took a shower, put a little cologne on. I was nervous. I was doing scales. I show up at
the
this
real
place.
hipster grifter.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 20s, so that's of hipsters.
I showed up at this place. I walked in. There's this guy kind of looking at me. Walking around, I'm like, maybe they're not here yet. And he's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here to play with the Yellow Jackets." And he said, "Aren't we all?"
Wow. Oh my God. That's so
I said,
good.
"What do you mean, aren't we?" And he's like, $300 or something. I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, me too." And I was like, "Oh, come on."
But then you guys started the best band ever.
Best band ever.
Hey.
Yeah, the black shirts. Yeah, we yeah.
And did anybody in the band know? Did any of the band ever hear about that there was this grifter doing this?
No, I don't think so. I think he used different jazz bands,
Right.
probably. I don't know. But they weren't in town.
Yeah.
And this was, I couldn't get on the internet. This was
Right.
probably 98.
Okay, so
Something like that.
pre
Oh,
that.
that
yeah.
is a good story.
Yeah, and then the one guy I see is, aren't we?
Hey, I don't know if you've heard of the polyphonic spray.
Right.
I got a white robe here. It's gonna cost you $300. See?
Yeah. But he dazzled me. He had the he knew exactly what I would do. And he was in this apartment on the phone, faking a phone call.
Wow.
He called somebody
Yeah.
here in my apartment.
Speaking of a grift in your apartment, it's a story you just told us earlier about. I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Oh,
Well,
It's kind of it's never mind. It's not maybe for another time.
we might get it. Yeah, maybe some other time. This weird
Yeah.
things have happened in my apartment.
it makes it a perfect place, I think, to do this. Just when you're listening to this podcast, everyone just know that some crazy shit has gone down inside this apartment.
Yeah.
Beyond me not paying my PG&E bill on time. So
That is the longest con.
yes, that is. Fuck those guys and Comcast. Fuck Comcast. Oh,
Special delivery.
that was a
Paco.
special delivery from the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
As their new CD. So we were talking about the FBI and all that kind of stuff. So he convinces the State Department to get him a passport, right? Is that correct? To send him back to the United States?
Yeah, I mean, he gets the passport immediately when he goes back. I mean, there's no question about giving him, like, you're this person, here's your passport in that kid's name.
Right.
No fingerprints.
And the family
No.
had no passports because, like, the sister hadn't even left the country, it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, she made one trip to Spain. I remember they spent a little bit of time about her being anxious about getting on the plane to fly all the way to Spain and pick him up. And then you see the actual news footage of when he lands in San Antonio.
Oh my God, that killed me. He walks off the plane.
The Michael Jackson thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's all wrapped up. And then there's the, some other family members, some kids and stuff like that. And everybody's just kind of looking at them. And what did they say? Like, okay, he's been gone, for all these years. He's been tortured. I mean, because just what killed me about that footage of him arriving at the airport is the way that everybody is looking at him, and they don't really know how to approach him. He's all swaddled in the like headscarf, and it's so strange, and they're trying to hug him kind of, and
Oh, man.
And he just recoils from human touch.
Yeah.
Apparently that's like how he was raised. He was a neglected child. I'm trying to read this 2008 New York article. That's an interview with him. And he talks about just, being a pretty neglected child and that's when you kind of feel bad for him.
Yeah.
That part, yeah.
Burdine.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
he said something about that too, like what would it be like to be so wanted, by this family, even though the glimpse that we've gotten into the family life is kind of sketchy.
Let me ask you guys, do you think, we've all have issues with our childhood. If you make it out of your childhood without an issue, then something went wrong. So what motivates someone to go to those depths? Do you think it's fear or ego?
I think there's some ego involved because he went and did those interviews later. Even though he knew that he was getting away with something, he went and he allowed himself to be interviewed by that local news person.
Right.
And that's when the ear discovery happens. So I think it's a little bit going back to Durst.
Yeah.
Which you keep doing. There's a little bit of he maybe does want a little bit of recognition for getting away with doing this.
Do you think it initially comes from fear, your fear of not having that family center?
I think to me, it almost seems like a compulsion. There's this part of his life that is not complete that makes him so crazy with the fact that he, had such a terrible childhood that he's just continually doing all these things in order to be accepted or to get attention or to make himself seen or something.
Right. Yeah.
It's it just seems like it has to be a combination of, a traumatic stress reaction to his childhood.
Right.
Mixed with some kind of psychological disorder.
I feel like I have to ask you, as a mom, you have a 13-year-old son. Would you not recognize?
No, I sat there watching it with my son, and
you watched it with your son.
Yeah, the second time when I just watched it last week.
He's getting ideas.
And and I just thought, how could you? There's no way on earth.
Right,
There's
as a mom.
no way on earth I would not know that it was him.
Even if you'd been strung out on heroin for a couple of years in the middle there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is so magical and crazy and weird about it, is that you do believe that the sister is believing that at first they're all believing it's him, but yeah, as I sat there watching it with my kid and looking at him, I was like, no way.
Right.
But
yeah,
who knows?
Unless you have something, unless you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? The jig is up. Talking about from the family's point of view, if they knew what had happened to Nicholas, and they're like, hey, Nicholas,
Right, because what else were they supposed to do? Yeah, that's interesting to think about it. Think about the scenario in which the half-brother killed him, the mother knew, they were trying to cover it up, they think it's all swept under the rug, nobody's ever gonna ask again,
and
he ran away, whatever, and
up.
then this person shows up and says that he's your son. You can't just be like, nope, not, but why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they be like, no, that's not him?
Yeah.
That's interesting too. It seems like a very elaborate cover up for them to go through all of those steps to pretend that this person who's saying he's their kid is their kid. That doesn't seem like the kind of family that would just invite some stranger in to live with them.
No.
Some guy from another country, some swarthy foreigner, I don't think that they would really do that.
Like he's dancing salsa in the backyard. He's going by himself.
So that seems kind of far-fetched that they would cover up a murder by going all the way to Spain and saying, yeah, he's our son, when they didn't believe it,
That is a good point.
And I didn't really think about that till just now.
I don't think that the director is fully saying, it's the family, is it somehow did it. I think just basically cracking it open enough to be to let that doubt come in, and to make it a little bit more ambiguous. The last shot is great last shot, which is the private investigator and the owner of the house where the disappearance happened, just digging in the backyard. And the way they set it up is just I found some tarp back there. Dog used to dig back in this one corner of the yard, but I never really dug that far. And then they just keep digging, and then there's just cuts to black. We never found anything.
Yeah,
out.
I know.
It's that is such a good it's so tense. There's a lot of reenactments in this one. I noticed in a few of the things we've been doing, and I know this is just a trend that's happened. This people like to do reenactments. They get actors to play younger versions of the sister and him, who kind of look like the part. It's confusing enough when they take a clip of audio from Frederick as and just run it through a phone filter. So it's am I listening to an actual recording from before, and then just kind of phases out to see him reenacting the calls. So I think the filmmakers did a very good job in terms of like keeping the suspense going, keeping the storytelling going.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it plays like a thriller, like it's like a horror movie. Like they do it. Like the opening shot is beautiful. The opening scenario with the when he calls the cops and he's in the phone booth, and like it's really beautifully shot. You know, like, and they set it up like a horror movie. I mean, it plays out like a horror movie. You know.
Yeah.
I just like
calls are coming from inside the family.
Yeah. I just can't get past that. Like the mom doesn't immediately recognize it's not the son, and that it wasn't the parents, it's not the family that says it's not. It's Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
The toot scooting jazz playing.
Toot scooting jazz playing, sedan driving.
Charlie Parker, I got a gig for you. It's gonna be $300 to get back this $300 from 12 years ago.
Like it's incredible. It just blows my mind. There's something about it I don't buy.
There is one thing, like my doubt with the sister is when the FBI people they take him to like Houston or Dallas or something, do that interview with the trauma specialist. He's like, this is not an American. They make that call, sister screams, and they don't really play out exactly what she says she remembers about that moment. But then she shows up at the airport and to try and kind of like get him back into in line with the family. Mm-hmm. And at that point, he's at least verbalizing after the fact that he's starting to have doubts about the family.
Yeah. I mean, also, I was just thinking while you're saying that is that it does seem, especially pre-internet age, so bizarre. How would somebody in Spain know this kid's name and know? I mean, so from the family's perspective, they're so not on guard thinking it's going to be any kind of scam whatsoever.
True.
I mean, at all. Like that seems completely ridiculous that all of a sudden somebody in Spain would call you and know the kid's name and say that it's him. I mean, so but what is going on with the mom? I mean, what's
I don't know. That's the part I can't get past. Like, my mom knows. Here's a weird story. I once watched a documentary about the raising the flag at Iwo Jima. Right? They didn't know who the guys were, the soldiers were. But one of the soldiers' moms got a hold of the government and said, I know who the guy in the back was because I recognize his butt. That's my son's butt. Like, that's how much moms know their kids, you know? And it turned out to be true that she was right because she knows her little boy's butt. Like, that's like, moms know, you know? Like, I don't know. I just find that to be extremely odd. And I have to go back to, for me, the real crime here is who killed Nicholas, not the imposter part of it, you know? Like,
what did he do jail time for? Just the impersonation or just being an immigrant and who got through the system of getting a fake passport? Like, I don't know what he actually did his time for. He was
also wanted in France.
For Interpol,
Interpol for doing a bunch of things.
Right.
And I think a couple other countries.
Yeah, that
Spain.
montage thing where they show all the different, or it's a list or whatever, they show all of the different identities that he's assumed with all the different names. I mean, so.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's why he did time in America, but it says, I think he did 6 years in American jail.
Oh, I didn't know.
And then is sent back to France,
where he gets married and has 3 kids.
Well, he goes back to Spain and does the thing again, like after this thing has happened.
He impersonates another kid.
Yeah,
at like 29 or something.
Yeah.
No, but someone who disappeared, who's around the same age, who like just shows up again. He does that in, he gets out of jail and goes back there in like the early 2000s, and he was still doing it up until. This says until 2007. Wikipedia says up to 2007. Now he's married, has kids. Wow. But who knows?
That's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of people should have been in Hollywood. They should be actors, like people who can portray, you know, like, but I'm sure you put a script in front of him, he wouldn't be able to do it. Are they interviewing him in jail?
That's what I thought in the very beginning. That was another thing that happened while I was watching, is that I originally just thought, well, obviously this person has to be in jail. So this is a jailhouse interview. And then you're kind of looking at his clothes and you're looking at the background and you're like, okay, so this person isn't in jail while they're, you know, and that was like another
messenger.
Little,
He had got Robin Williams hand-me-down.
Yeah, he does have a little floral shirt on and stuff. Now, Beth, is there something when you were watching this that you wish they had actually like done more of, researched more of, or given you more information about?
Yeah, I did. The thing that George was saying about what the sister, how the family learned that it wasn't him, and there's always just something problematic about when they're doing the interviews and the interview subject has already gone through the experience, but they're telling it as if, well, what were you thinking when he first came back? And so I wish there had been more stuff about the doubt that the families were having. Like, it almost just felt like they believed it was him, and then they were told it wasn't. And there wasn't a lot, like, the sister kind of says, like, well, they said that, but he had bleached his hair badly. You could see the roots. Like that was, there were so many things that I felt like I would have, that I would have wanted to know, like, but I guess maybe the filmmaker doesn't want to trample all over that and kind of wants the pure reaction without putting them on the defensive about it. And then I don't know, when somebody's gone through that kind of trauma, you have to imagine like the kid in your family is just missing, and you're already thinking about all the horrible things that could have happened to that kid. And then I guess you just let them speak for themselves and reveal what they want to reveal, without, I don't know, making them feel terrible.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah. Or having too much of an agenda as a filmmaker, as a documentary filmmaker. You don't want too much of an agenda. Yeah.
What about you? Were there things like, what would you guys have wanted to?
Well, for me, it's like I wanted to know more about Nicholas's disappearance. Like, they don't really talk about it very much.
Right. Like, who last saw him? He goes to the place to play basketball.
Yeah. And also more about like the family's background, the fact that they don't mention that the mom was addicted to heroin, what happened really to the half brother, what kind of fights did they really, I mean, like,
I actually think the basketball thing was the lie that Bourdain made up and told the FBI, right? So I don't think they actually know if he ever went to play basketball.
Oh, I think that's what they said, because they said we got into a fight.
Oh, okay.
I thought they said we got into a fight, and then he went off to play basketball.
And then he called.
Because I gave him this much money to pay for it or something like that.
Yeah, and he called and wanted to ride home, but mom was asleep. Which
gotcha.
Once again, I'm making air quotes.
Yeah.
On
She's
the nod.
sleeping with the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I would have liked to know more about that stuff. I feel like a lot of emphasis was placed on Frederick as being this criminal and the family being kind of duped, but I feel like the real crime, obviously, is the disappearance of Nicholas and what really happened with that. I mean, obviously, that's not the story, and that's not the film the filmmaker was playing, but I kind of wanted to know more about that.
So you're kind of the mind that what he's doing is, in a way, it's victimless, except for the fact that he emotionally manipulated this family.
Basically,
which shouldn't be illegal. It's not illegal. Apparently it is.
It's not on the...
Look, a lot of families are emotionally manipulated.
Yeah, if you cross international lines to do that and obtain an illegal passport...
Look, if it's just within a real family and you manipulate each other, that's
high
completely
crimes and misdemeanors, like killing the kid or something. But like, I feel like, I mean, obviously what he did was there was criminal intent there of some sort, but like I just wanted to know more about what happened to Nicholas and more about that story as well, and a little bit more about the family.
And who was the other guy? The sister's husband? Was that the kind of... Yeah, the long-haired, bearded guy. I mean, that family just seems so exhausted. Everyone in that family seems so tired.
That is kind of the lower middle class in this country, though, I think. I think everyone's pretty much tired.
I did like that one moment where Bourdain, like, talks about showing up in this tiny town in Texas, and then, like, there's just him looking out of the Venetian blinds. I mean, like, well, I thought America was going to be like, cities, like LA, California, Hollywood.
Right.
But it's like, oh, no, you got... That's like
his karmic retribution for what he pulled on him. He has to live in the middle.
It's like our other friend who's like, dad married this woman from China and then moved to like Mobile, Alabama. And she's probably, and with her son, is just like, well, we thought America was the land of opportunity. It's like there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
And like you just got dumped in the armpit of
Southeast San Antonio. It's not the...
Apologies to our Alabama listeners.
Yes. You can email George at your
Alabama Hater 77. That's my
CompuServe.net.
Hotmail.
So then we find, because of Charlie Parker's ability to crack the case, and then let's talk briefly about Nancy Fisher, the FBI person.
Oh yeah,
like what I feel like, I don't know, I feel like so many people got duped by this guy. Like, how did she come across to you in this?
I think she kind of couldn't believe. I felt like she was incredulous about the entire thing. That she was like, how does this person who obviously was not born in this country,
right.
that you can hear the way that he talks. I felt like she was put in there to be sort of the voice of reason or the viewer's voice or whatever, thinking like, I have no idea how it got this far. What else about her? I'm trying to think, what were some of her key?
It just seems like she was kind of like, wasn't she kind of stonewalled a little bit too? I mean, she was trying to look more into this, and I think people are just kind of like, hey, it's him.
Yeah.
Like, let's just.
She didn't get a call from the family, so they weren't questioning it.
Right.
So they wanted to interview him right when he got off the plane, but they didn't.
Right, and in that case, if you're going to live with this family and the family is accepting it, what are you gonna do?
Well, and then she told the story about the mom. Trying to interview the mom, right? And she was just like in hysterics and didn't want to be interviewed, didn't want to talk to her. Like it's always those, like he keeps putting up this, like the filmmaker, Bart, keeps putting up these kind of like signals that like maybe the family killed him. Like, you're always just kind of like, wow, man, what could possibly happen in the next scene? That's what I loved about this documentary.
I love documentaries that have this whole nebulous air about them where you just are not, you're questioning yourself all the time. You're wondering what the filmmakers, why they did it that certain way I love that. I love that about Capturing the Friedmans, about how you just are like, wait, I don't think, but there's it, but I don't, it's so somehow satisfying, even though it leaves you totally craving more information.
Yeah, you're like, they did it. They didn't do it. They did it. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I call it the uh-oh factor. That's what I love about documentaries, when you're like, uh-oh, like, uh-oh.
Yeah, you think it's going one way, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, when the Charlie Parker shows up, that it takes this whole other.
Oh my God, Charlie Parker needs his own TV show.
What
other cases has Charlie Parker cracked lately?
Many. So many.
That earlobe trick. What TV show did he say he learned it from? He saw it on an episode of some show.
Was it like Perry Mason?
Something
Matlock?
like that.
Or the ear thing?
Yeah. He's like, I remember from an episode.
This New Yorker piece says that Bourdain did see that movie Catch Me If You Can, and that was somehow influential
so
to him.
Tom
But
Hanks'
what year
fault.
did that come out, though? That came out
94, like mid-90s.
No, this is a 2000s movie.
Oh,
because
was it?
DiCaprio's in it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's weird that it's mentioned here as like an influence because he was doing this stuff before that movie came out. But
maybe it's like, I can take this.
Yeah, he also talks about, here's this good quote in here. I think I would be a very good actor like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone. I don't know what accent I'm doing. But I don't want to play somebody. I want to be somebody.
See, that's what I'm talking about. He could have been probably a really good actor.
Good improviser.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not supposed to kill anyone in improv. But
I do love that scene, though, when Charlie Parker gets the shovel out of his car and
my God, he goes walking across the street into the house.
Harumph.
Yeah.
I thought for sure, I was like, oh my God, they're gonna find something. Like, he's going to find something, because but like you said, it just kind of like ends and it makes you wonder. Like this is one of those documentaries that I always recommend to people to watch, and I try to do look it up on Google once in a while to see if they found anything else that's gone on, because I keep hoping that they're gonna rediscover something, especially about like what happened to Nicholas.
I know, because sometimes you wonder, like with a kid like that, the way that they portray him, Nicholas, I could totally see that kid getting in a car with a stranger, somebody just being, I'll take you home, and hey, you know what? Let's not go home. Let's go to Dallas. And it just seems like that kid would be like, fuck my family. Let's go,
Woo,
Who knows?
I was going to say also that the sister, so her name's Carrie Gibson, she is a lot older than him, so is he a half sibling to her?
Probably. I think they're all half siblings.
Yeah, so there's something going on with that stuff. So she didn't really grow up with him the way that a sister that's like close in age might have grown up with you.
Well, at the beginning they show, you're right, because they show that birthday footage where she's like, Nicholas is like, oh, and here's the birthday girl, and she's a lot older than he is.
She's 31.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why they put that in there, so that's... For the smart viewers, they would myself.
There's a little bit of credibility. Like, I have siblings that are like 20 years younger than me, and like, I would recognize them in a crowd, but it's not like I know them so well that like
you don't know their butts.
Yeah, I do not know their butts.
Yeah,
I'm going to go on record saying I don't know my little brother and sister's butts, or my sister's butt, honestly.
That's well, but her doppelganger.
But her doppelgangers, but you know very well.
Well, now it's really good because the doppelganger, she was a tattoo artist and she has all these tats. So it's like pretty easy to tell them apart now. And if you put them side by side, it's like...
So the way that I've the last question that I've asked the other two guests, and I'll ask you the same thing, is to recommend a documentary that you love.
Oh yeah, well I was talking about it before. I love before we started recording, so here it's going to be a surprise for you. But it's called Marwin Call, and it's this incredible documentary of a man who, and a lot of the story, there's a lot of spoiler alerts you could do for this, which I won't, but he, as a result of a brain injury, creates this tiny replicas of people that he knows in his life and his town, and he has all these stories that go along with this kind of made up version of life, and then all these other things are revealed about his story throughout the documentary. But it's great. It's called Marwin Call. It's Marwencol.
And I just saw that there's going to be a fictionalized version of that story. Directed by Robert Zemeckis. I think it's going to be Steve Carell playing the guy.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Dig that up, yeah.
I saw the trailer and it looks amazing. I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah, now are we going to go see the JT Leroy documentary? Let's check some showtimes.
We should.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Do you want to say anything about what you're doing in general?
Oh, I'm writing a novel. So that's mostly all that I'm doing. I mean, I'm still doing the Porchlight Storytelling Series in San Francisco, and I'm living in Brooklyn, working on my novel, doing some acting.
Right on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks to Beth Lisick for coming out and talking to us about The Imposter. You can follow Beth on Twitter @BLisick.
And please like and review this podcast on iTunes.
And our theme music is by David Siegel.
If you want to hear more shows, please visit supdocpodcast.com.